Hello and Happy New Year. My name's Elizabeth and I read kind of for a living. I mean, there's other steps involved, but basically I read for a living. I'm not going to beat around the bush. My 2025 sucked. It was a bad year. As much as I still found books to absolutely love and rave about and recommend to you in the second half of the year, everything I read was tainted by losing my dad and being really, really sad about it. All the time. I started 2025 with the best of intentions and then everything fell apart and I was just in survival mode for most of the year. And because of that, I think the only goal that I met in 2025 that I set at the start of the year was the number of books read. I set a goal to read 125 books and I read exactly 125. So there's that, but every other goal I set, including goals that I have had ongoing for years and usually done a pretty good job of, just went out the window. But in 2026, I really want to refocus. I want to be more intentional about what I'm picking up. I want to set challenges for myself. I want to be more consistent. And I also want to try to make it fun for myself because I think something that I definitely lost sight of in 2025 was the fun of it all. And that's not to say that I'm going to have a whole personality transplant where I stop talking about serious things in my videos and reflecting on how books handle those serious topics, because I think that's important and it's something I'm always going to pay attention to. I'm also always going to be a critical reader. It just is what it is, you know? I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And that's not what I mean by having fun, because I do think reading critically can be and is generally fun. But what I mean is injecting fun into my reading through goals and challenges. I think I'm the kind of person, well, I know I'm the kind of person that thrives with a little bit more structure, a little bit of a deadline. Some of that is that I have ADHD, and if I don't have repercussions for not doing something or a little bit of anxiety, it's not going to happen. All that to say, I'm setting a bunch of goals for 2026. I might not achieve all of them, but I'm going to do my darndest. And I thought it might be interesting to share these in a video in case it gives you ideas for your own goals, but also you can express your own goals in the comments. And sometimes just writing it somewhere where other people can see it can be enough to light that fire under you to actually work on it. You know? So anyway, enough blabbing, let's get into it. Starting with what we most think of as a classic reading goal, the number of books I want to actually read in 2026. I'm upping the ante a little bit. I'm challenging myself a bit. Like I said, my 2025 goal was 125 books and I hit that goal exactly. I finished my 125th book, I think around halfway through December, and then I kind of stopped reading for the end of the year, doing other things like playing games and watching movies and just giving that part of my brain a bit of a break. But because I was able to hit my 125 book goal, even in the worst year of my life, even without really focusing on it and having several months where I read significantly less than my average, which I would say around 10 books a month is a comfortable pace for me and something that I hit without really having to focus on it or try too hard. So for 2026, just to push myself a little bit, because I don't think I've really upped my reading goal for a few years. I feel like the last 3 to 4 years, maybe even a little longer, my reading goal has hovered between 115 and 125. And I don't think I've ever gone above 125. So for 2026, just for fun, just to see if I can do it, you know, it's not the end of the world if I can't hit this. I'm not going to freak out if I'm falling behind. But I'm going to aim for 150 books. Even though that seems like a huge jump from 125, that's really just reading 2 extra books a month, basically, with 1 extra lonely book somewhere. I really do feel like 2 extra books in a month is not a huge deal, is not an impossible challenge for me. Like I said, I feel like a really easy, doable pace for me is around 10 books a month. So aiming for 12 or 13 books a month instead, I think I can do that. And the way I think I can do that is with my second goal for this year, which is I want to read every single day. I want a perfect streak on Fable. I want to pick up a book and read for at least 5 minutes. That's it. I'm not going to make it, you know, impossible for myself. I'm not going to say I have to read for an hour every single day, because some days that's just not going to happen. Because as wild as it might seem, even though my job is so focused on reading, I don't actually read every single day right now. currently. There are days when I'm just not really in the mood for the books I'm reading. I'm feeling tired. I have a lot of editing to do. Sometimes my brain is just not with me, and I just need to give it a second to reboot itself. But I do find that when I let myself not read, especially for a couple consecutive days, it makes it so much harder to start back again. I really get into that inertia trap of not reading anything, and then it takes so much more effort to start again. If 5 minutes is all I can give, then it's all I can give. But if I end up reading longer, fantastic. And I think if I do read every single day, I'm going to end up hitting my 150 book goal just by upping the number of days I'm reading every month from what I was doing this year and in years past. Also, I realize that 150 books is a very unreasonable goal for most people. I acknowledge that I have more time to read than the average person and also have incentive to read because it's part of my job. Though I will also say, I think there's a misconception that bookish creators can read literally 24/7. I do think sometimes people weirdly try, I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is. Let me know in the comments if you have theories about why people get so testy about book goals, especially once they approach or surpass the 100 books a year range. But people get really weird about it, and people really love to claim that it's either impossible to read that many books, or you're skimming, you're not paying attention, speed reading, whatever the case may be, or just lying. I see that a lot. Or that you must be unemployed, or it's different because you get paid to read all day. I wish I got paid to read all day, okay? That would be my dream. If someone would just become like an old-timey patron and pay me a living wage to just read all day and that's it, absolute dream life unlocked. So I just want to put that out there. Please don't bring that weird energy to these comments. I would love for us all to just share our goals, whatever they are. If you want to read one book or 1,000, I think that's amazing. And I think all the goals should be celebrated. And we should all hype each other up, encourage each other, and celebrate our wins, whatever they may be. I think the weirdly competitive energy is strange and we don't need it in 2026. Let's leave that behind in 2025. Okay? Anyway, moving on. I do also have some more specific niche goals or specific reading challenges that I'm aiming for in 2026. So let's talk about those next, starting with official reading challenges that I'm doing. The first one is one that's continuing from 2025, which is my Read It or Unhaul It challenge. This is a challenge I started, I think in July 2025, when I scanned all the physical books on my shelves that I had not read yet to put in my Notion reading tracker, and also just to know how many I had, and I had just under 200. So since the summer, I've been doing this Read It or Unhaul It challenge. And in 2025, it was a weekly challenge, or I tried to make it weekly. Sometimes I was more successful than others, but spinning a wheel with all the titles loaded on it so that the wheel could randomly pick something. And then I would try to read that book in that week and then review it for you. I did mini reviews on TikTok and Instagram. And then at the end of a month, I would compile my longer form reviews in more of a traditional reading vlog here on YouTube. And that was really fun. I made some really good progress, but I definitely did not manage to read a book every single week. And I did sometimes struggle with the pace, not because reading a book in a week is impossible for me. I typically finish multiple books in a week, but because I'm a mood reader. So sometimes whatever book the wheel lands on is not a book that I'm in the mood for that week. So it's automatically going to be more of a challenge. And because life happens, if I have a lot of editing to do that week, that's way less time to read. If I have travel planned, or I just have activities, the one time a month that I leave the house. Things happen, life happens. But also having a week timeline meant it was more like 4 or 5 days in reality, because I had to also schedule when I was going to film and edit not only my short form reviews, which I film separately from my YouTube reviews. I just ended up having very little actual practical time to read the book every week. And it was stressful for me. It ended up being very stressful. And I felt like I was not doing a very good job of being consistent. So anyway, all that to say, for 2026, I'm continuing the challenge, but I am going to bump it to 2 weeks. Every other week, I'm going to spin the wheel, pick a book randomly from my TBR bookshelf, and either read it and review it for you, or unhaul it. And I'll still do the longer form YouTube reading vlogs every 4 books or so, but that will be every other month instead of every single month. So because my plan is to pick a book every other week for my physical TBR, even though sometimes I might end up unhauling them instead of reading them, I'm also hoping to just pick books off my physical TBR other times as well for reading vlogs and just for my own enjoyment, which is something that I did do in 2025 as well. So hopefully it will kind of even out, even if I DNF 5 of the books that the wheel lands on. Hopefully I'll at least pick up another 5 books just separately from the challenge. So anyway, my goal is to read at least 26 books from my physical TBR in 2026, because that would be a book every other week. Makes sense. I'm also implementing a point system, which I'm very excited about. So hold on to that thought, because I'm going to talk a little bit about my sort of partial no-buy, soft book buying ban for 2026, because that is totally intertwined with the point system. We'll get there in a second. Firstly, though, I do have another reading challenge that I'm doing in 2026, and that is bringing back my Reading Around the World challenge. This is a challenge that I started, I think, 5 years ago. I have a very old reading vlog where I announced that I wanted to try reading a book from every country in the world, and I have made some progress over the years. I think I'm currently sitting at 41 countries read out of 199 total, so not terrible, but that's around 20%, but I definitely fell off focusing on it. I would say for the last 2 years, 2025, I really wanted to come back strong after not doing so great in 2024. And then 2025 punched me in the face repeatedly. So I didn't make a lot of progress in 2025, and I wanted to fix that for 2026. This challenge is going to be structured very similarly. I have a wheel with all the countries on it, so I'm going to randomly spin a wheel to pick a country. If I already own a book physically or in ebook or audiobook form for that country, then I'll read that. If I don't, I have to do a little bit of research and pick something. And then I have 2 weeks to read the book from that country. And then again, at the end of the 2 weeks, I'll give you a short form review on Instagram and TikTok. You can follow me with the links in the description box if you want to follow along on these weekly challenges, bi-weekly challenges, alternating challenges. You get it. And then also do the longer form YouTube reviews. And then that way, every month you can get a reading vlog for one of those 2 challenges. And I can alternate those reading vlogs month by month, as well as alternating on Instagram and TikTok week by week, you know? And then therefore, ideally, especially because my Reading Around the World challenge doesn't have an unhaul or DNF component to it, the aim is to actually finish a book from every country. I am hoping that I will achieve reading one every other week for all of 2026, which means that I will read from 26 more countries in 2026, which should bring me to 67 countries read, which is not too shabby. I've already spun the wheel the first time, so I have my first pick. Spoilers, it's from the Philippines, and I'm very excited about it. So hopefully you're excited too. I am very glad that I am officially tackling this again, because it's a challenge that's really important to me, that I'm very passionate about and excited about, and I found some amazing new favorites through this challenge already, and I'm sure I'll find many more. So anyway, the next thing I want to touch on is the soft book buying ban. So there are a few guidelines to this. First of all, this is only for physical books because it's mostly about the space situation. I'm already pretty good at utilizing my library through Libby for ebooks and audiobooks. I would say the vast majority of the audiobooks and ebooks I read come from my library. I really only ever buy them if they're not available for my library or the wait time is like 14 months or something like that. So I'm pretty good on the digital side already, I would say. And then also this does not apply to books that I'm not buying. So gifts from friends and family, ARCs, and gifted copies, those don't count. Those are the parameters. But basically, I'm going to be doing my best to buy significantly fewer physical books in 2026. And I'm going to do that by gamifying a little bit, using points to make it a game and make it fun, so that hopefully that dopamine from the points situation replaces the dopamine I get from buying a new book, at least somewhat. It's an attempt. We're trying. So again, the points, because this is all about physical books and the number of physical books I have on my shelves, the points also only apply to reading or unhauling physical books. So both for my Read It or Unhaul It challenge, the official books that the wheel is landing on every time, but also any books that I happen to pick up and read from my physical shelves, or any books that I decide to unhaul and put in my little free library, those books count for points. And the point system is pretty simple. If I DNF and unhaul a book, I get 10 points. And if I finish a book, I get 5 points per 100 pages. So if it's a 200-page book, I get 10 points. If it's a 500-page book, I get 25 points. You get the idea. And I need to earn 100 points to buy a new physical book. That means that I would have to finish 4 500-page books, or I would have to finish 10 200-page books, or unhaul 10 books to be able to buy one new book. And hopefully this will really curb my spending, reduce the number of books I tend to buy when I do go to an independent bookshop or order from Book Outlet to, 1 or 2 books based on however many points I've accumulated to that point, instead of my current average, which is probably closer to 10 books per order on Book Outlet or visit to an indie bookshop. I want to reduce that. I want to chill a little bit. I want to calm down. So that is my point system, and I'm very excited about it. I did build some databases into Notion, into my reading tracker, so that I can do this automatically, so I don't have to do the math for the points, because I feel like we've established that I'm terrible at math, so I shouldn't be in charge of the math. The formulas are in charge of the math, but when a book is included in the challenge, it will automatically calculate how many points it's worth, and it will assign me my points based on whether I finish the book or if I DNF it, automatically add those up. And then I also have a little shop that I built so that I can redeem 100 points to buy a book. Or if I save up to 1,000 points, I can do a 10 book shopping spree and I can redeem those and it will automatically subtract them from my total. I've also incorporated a little bit of a daily habit tracker system where I can earn an extra half point per habit that I do on a daily basis so that I can work on some of the things that I have struggled with in the past, like waking up and going to bed early because I'm a night owl and I'm terrible at going to bed and waking up at reasonable human times. Things like that. I have 10 habits on this little habit tracker, and each one that I do in a day, I get half a point. And I am incorporating this point system, this physical TBR challenge, into my Notion reading tracker that I have available for my patrons in the top 2 tiers. So if you are a patron, if you already have the reading tracker, you can just download this page, link it to your own reading tracker. Or if you don't have a reading tracker and you're curious, my Notion reading tracker is starting to get a little sprawling and out of hand. But it's fun. It has lots of different things you can use. You can completely ignore or delete entire pages and sections if you don't care about them. But I've also incorporated an entire database for the Reading Around the World Challenge. So if that's something you want to do as well, that is also part of the reading tracker. And I just think it's fun. I'm excited about the points. So that is my soft no buy, my partial book buying ban, because I still will be buying books here and there, but I have to earn the points for them first. And I've tried to make it not totally impossible, but a bit of a challenge. So we'll see how it goes. I might have to come back and change the point values, especially for how many it costs to get a new book, if I find that it's way too easy or way too hard. But we'll cross that road when we get to it. So moving away from official challenges now, I do have a few more goals. For most of these goals, because I don't have an official setup in my Notion to track them, I'll probably be making some spreads in my reading journal to track these various goals throughout the year. I am setting up a new reading journal for 2026. That video should be coming next week probably, so watch out for that. But yeah, these are just additional goals that I want to focus on in 2026. So the first one is refocusing back on reading in my second language, which is French. In previous years, I was doing a little bit better at my goal of reading in French, but I don't think I read a single book in French in 2025. And that's not great because it's hard enough to maintain a language even if you are practicing, especially if you're not in an immersive environment. So I need to stay more consistent if I want to keep the ability to read in French. So that's what I'm focusing on in 2026. And I think a hopefully reasonable goal for myself is to try to read a book in French every month. So 12 French books in a year. I can start a French book at the very start of the month and take the whole month to read it if I need to. Typically, I do read much slower in French, not only because it's not my native language, and also because I'm pretty rusty and I don't practice that much, but also because when I'm reading in French, I like to look up every word that I don't recognize and write a little definition next to it in the hopes that that will help it stick a little bit. I also often add it into a little vocabulary spreadsheet I have in Notion. I know I use Notion for everything, but that takes time for sure. I also often find that when I'm reading in French, I like to read out loud so that I'm practicing my pronunciation at the same time. And that also really slows down my reading. So I think giving myself a whole month to read a book, but just trying to be consistent about having one going at all times. And as soon as I finish one, I pick up another one instead of kind of relying on fate. I don't know. I feel like in 2025, I just thought, well, at some point I'll pick up a French book probably, and somehow I'll reach my goals, which makes no sense because I'm the one who has to pick up the books for the goals to be reached. I have to do the work, right? So I'm going to try to do that in 2026. And it's probably going to be a mix of classics and more contemporary reads. I'm currently reading I Who Have Never Known Men. I actually started this book in English because I didn't realize it was originally written in French. I knew it was translated, but not from what language. I wasn't super loving the writing style, and I was finding it a little bit clunky is probably the wrong word, but it just something about it wasn't quite sitting right. So I looked it up to find out what language it was translated from, hoping that that would help me sort of understand the flow a little bit better. And as soon as I realized it was originally written in French, everything made sense. The writing style is very French coded, and French writing is very different structurally from English writing in a lot of ways. So it just immediately clicked. And also I realized, well, if it was originally written in French, I might as well read the original because I have that skill. It's the only language I can do that in. And that's sort of the second part of my goal, which is, I hope that I can finish 12 French books in the year, and I'm going to try to do that by reading one every month. But also part of that is that anytime I pick up a book that was originally written in French, I have to read it in the original French. I'm not allowed to read the translation. So I am currently reading Moi qui n'ai pas connu des hommes by Jacqueline Hartman, and hopefully I'll finish it by the end of January so I can keep the ball rolling. Ooh, also, I forgot, there's a little bit of a loophole for my physical no-buy to do with my other reading challenges and reading goals. Basically, if I want to read a book that was originally written in French and I cannot for the life of me find an ebook or an audiobook in French, I can only find the translated version, but I can find a physical book that I can order, then I'm allowed to get the physical book without having to use points because it's the only way that I can read it. Same thing for reading around the world, because there are some countries where it's just a lot harder to get a hold of the books, especially in an English translation. So if I land on a country and I pick a book I want to read and I cannot, again, for the life of me find the ebook or audiobook version, I can order a physical copy, again, without using points. But those are the only loopholes just to reach my other challenges. And I have to do my best to find an ebook or audiobook version, ideally from my library, if at all possible. Also, I will do my best to just use points for these if I have the points, but if I don't have the points yet and I land on a country and I can only find one book translated into English from that country and I cannot find it in any version other than physical, I can buy it for myself even if I don't have the points. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, moving on. You get it. I always over-explain everything. It's who I am as a person. Sort of in a similar vein, having to do with languages and one per month, I have a goal to read more in translation. This is another goal that I just kind of forgot to focus on in 2025 with everything going on in my life, and I wasn't really tracking it or paying attention. I did still read books in translation, but it wasn't as many as I typically like to. So for 2026, I'm going to try to pick up at least one book in translation every single month. Again, this can't be a book that was translated from French, because if it was translated from French, I have to read the French. But any other language translated into English, at least one a month. And this can be for other challenges. It can be for my Reading Around the World challenge, my Read It or Haul It challenge. It could fit another prompt for one of my other goals. And I think because I do have a fair number of translated books on my shelves already, and because I'm doing the Reading Around the World challenge, that I will end up easily hitting this goal this year. But just in case I don't, just in case I'm falling behind or I have a month where I haven't come across a book in translation for any of my other goals, this goal is there to just remind me to seek something out, pick something up, and read it in translation. Pretty straightforward. Speaking of goals that I've had in the past that I kind of fell off on in 2025 but want to come back to in 2026, reading diversely in a multitude of ways. So the first way is reading books written by BIPOC authors. This is something that I try to do all the time, and I think that I typically do pretty well even when I'm not super focused on it. But in 2025, I really wasn't tracking my stats the way that I usually do on a monthly basis. So I kind of lost sight of the bigger picture and how I was doing, and didn't have that chance to recalibrate as the year continued. So I ended up reading a smaller percentage of books by BIPOC authors than I typically would like to and have in the past. I don't know off the top of my head how many, but I'll put the percentage up here for you. Future me will tell you. So my goal in 2026 is, I think, the same that I've had in past years, which is to try to hit 50% of my reading overall written by BIPOC authors. Ideally, even more than 50%. So that would be 75 books written by BIPOC authors in 2026. If I hit my goal of 150 total at minimum. More is always welcome. So that's the goal. I think that that's very doable if I'm paying attention to it and can, again, redirect and focus on it if I start falling behind, especially if I'm doing specific reading challenges where the books are chosen by someone other than me. So, for example, I'm reading all the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards again this year, like I have in past years. And I think almost every single winner from 2025 was written by a white author. Don't quote me, I haven't double checked. So that's already quite a few books at the start of the year that are written by white authors because I'm not choosing the books myself. So knowing that I have this goal and keeping track of it throughout the year is going to allow me to compensate for challenges like that are very white author heavy by focusing on BIPOC authors. Again, I think I do a pretty good job of this already, and many of my favorite authors can contribute to this. So I think this isn't going to be too much of a challenge. I just have to be aware of it as the year continues. And that also applies to my next goal, which is reading diversely again when it comes to queer authors and characters. Once again, I think this is something that I naturally do pretty well. I myself am queer, I'm bisexual, and I do love a lot of queer authors and a lot of queer stories, and it's something that I really think about and focus on. And I'm often enticed to pick up a book because I know that it's focusing on queer characters or written by a queer author. So this is something, again, that I think I already do pretty well. Looking at my stats for 2025, this is the percentage of authors that I read from who openly identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. Did pretty well even without focusing on it, but it's something that I would like to, again, just be aware of and track as the year goes on, which is what I've done in previous years before 2025, just to make sure that I can recalibrate. Same thing. So for LGBTQI+ authors, I think 50% might be a little bit too ambitious, especially based on the other goals I have this year, and especially reading older books or classics where there might be suspicion that an author was queer, but they weren't out at the time because it just really wasn't feasible for them. So I think for my LGBTQI+ authors goal, I'm going to have a goal of at least 25% of the authors I read from, especially because I can only count an author if they are openly identifying as part of the community, and not every author feels comfortable being out. Trying to accommodate for that as well. I'm also going to pick up books that are featuring queer characters, but I'm only going to count this if the author themselves is self-identifying publicly. So I think 25% is doable. I might bump that up to 30% depending on how the year starts off and how I'm doing. We'll see. Obviously, again, more is better. So maybe I'll just set it at 25%. And if I totally lap myself and get way more than that, then that's amazing. Also, as part of this, I'm going to do a little bit of a challenge, a year-long challenge, inspired by a comment one of you left on a recent video. This is the comment. Thank you for your suggestion. I'm going to do this. I'm excited. So basically, I'm going to work my way through all the letters of the acronym. So starting with, I'm going to use the Canadian version, which is 2S LGBTQIA+, the 2S standing for Two-Spirit. So I'm going to work my way through each of these and find a book that is by an author who identifies as the identity represented by that letter or letter and number, and I'm going to read a book from them. And I believe there are 8 identities represented by the main acronym before we get to the plus. If I do one a month, then I end up with 4 extra months at the end of the year for some of the plus identities, which I think will be cool. I don't have any plans for this to be sort of an official challenge like my Reading Around the World or Read It or Haul It, where I'm doing check-ins and things. I was just planning on treating this like some of my other monthly reading challenges, like reading in French and reading in translation, where I'll obviously review the books for you in my wrap-ups, and the books might be included in a reading vlog or something, but otherwise not doing specific check-ins. But let me know if you would want it to be more of a official challenge with more dedicated check-ins, because I could probably do that as well. I might be over-promising, but I'll try. So that is that goal. I'm excited to refocus in on this as well. And that is it for my big goals. What's left are just some sort of one-off random goals, I guess, that I don't know how else to categorize. I might do another book bingo, which I've done in my reading journal in the past, but specifically fill all the bingo spaces with my own very random niche prompts instead of using, I've often used the Read Harder challenge for my prompts, but I do find sometimes their prompts are either things that I'm already reading a lot of, so they're not a challenge, or they're very outside of my scope, like prompts to read middle grade, for example, which is just not something that I'm super interested in doing generally, and I usually just don't even attempt those prompts. So I think making all my own prompts and making them very niche is going to be fun. So I'm just going to share 2 of them with you now as a bit of a teaser, but definitely come back for my reading journal setup if you want to see even more of these like niche random prompts that I'm going to do. Also feel free to leave suggestions and recommendations in the comments, because I think I'm going to struggle a little bit with coming up with enough prompts to fill an entire bingo, but I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited to come up with my own instead of using a pre-made list. So the 2 that I'm going to tease for you are, the first one is read in public. For most of my life, this would have actually been a very easy goal that I would be already doing all the time. But in this current phase of my life, because I work from home and I have so many cozy places I can read, and I have 2 cats who love to cuddle with me while I read, it is very enticing to just always read from home. It's very comfortable. I don't have to get out of my pajamas. It's a win-win. But I do feel like I sometimes need to see the sun I do sometimes need to chat with another person, even if it's just ordering a coffee at a coffee shop. So one of my prompts is going to be reading in public. I at least want to do it once in 2026. I know that seems ridiculous, but for me, that's going to be a challenge. I think I'm going to walk to the closest coffee shop to me and sit there and read. This is a separate prompt, I guess, but I also want to attend at least one silent book club. There's a silent book club in my town where people meet up and read just simultaneously, but you don't have to talk. It's not like it's an official book club. You're not all reading the same thing, but you just exist in the same space and you read at the same time. And then you can hang out after and talk if you want. And I have been wanting to go to one of those for years since we moved here, and I never have. I always chicken out. I'm becoming a hermit, I think. So I'm going to make that another one of mine. Separate from reading in public is attending at least one of these silent book club meetings and forcing myself to stay and chat to people after. I say that like it's torture. I do actually like talking to people. I'm just very out of practice because I never leave my house. Anyway, so those are two. And then the last one I'm going to share is going to seem really random, but if you've been here for a while, you might know the lore and why this is here. But I want to read a book in 2026 about the Loch Ness Monster. The lore here is that I picked up a book about the Loch Ness Monster that was like a contemporary romance where one of the main characters was cursed and was the Loch Ness Monster, but also had a human form at the start. I think it was the start of 2025. 2025 feels like it was 10 years long, so I don't know. I think it was. It was one of my few DNFs for the year. And I thought that it was going to be a cute romance where the other character was going to help them sort of break the curse where they could stay in their human form forever, sort of thing, and that the romance was going to be, human on human. But turns out there was at least one explicit scene where the Loch Ness character was actually in their monster form. And that's just not for me. Not gonna yuck anyone's yum. If that's your thing, have at it, have fun. But it's not what I thought I was getting into. And I ended up walking away from that one, but that had whetted my appetite, not for monster erotica, but for a story about the Loch Ness Monster and set in Scotland. One side of my family is originally from Scotland, and that's where my last name comes from. It's a Scottish name, and my dad was really into Scottish history and our family history and where our name came from and the legends tied to that. And we went on a family trip to Scotland when I was a kid and went on a boat ride on Loch Ness. I swore I saw just a bit of the Loch Ness Monster's tail at one point. And I remember my dad being so excited by how enthusiastic I was about the legend and about being in Scotland. And I just feel like it's a nice way to honor my dad, I guess. I'm going to get all sappy and emotional, but to read a book about the Loch Ness Monster, maybe something more serious, maybe something nonfiction, I don't know, but something about the Loch Ness Monster. And I can feel like I'm honoring my dad or close to my dad when I read it. And probably cry a bunch because that's my natural state these days. That's going to be one of my niche prompts on my bingo for 2026 is reading a book about the Loch Ness Monster. If you have recommendations, especially ones that don't involve sex with a human while the Loch Ness Monster is in a monster form, leave those in the comments down below. If one of you tries to trick me by recommending a book that has sex between the Loch Ness Monster and a human being, I will be very upset. Don't do it to me. So anyway, I'm going to fill a bingo with very niche specific prompts like that. And I think that's going to be more fun and I'm going to be more motivated to actually try to complete the bingo if I come up with all the prompts myself instead of choosing a pre-made list. I'll still probably use the Read Harder list as inspiration because they often have really awesome prompts. And I do think that it's really useful to use something like that, especially if you're just starting to expand and want to try different genres, just read more widely or more diversely or try different things. I think they often pick really interesting prompts and they also often have suggestions for their prompts, which is helpful. But I just think I'm at a place in my reading where even though I do read pretty widely and diversely and I do like lots of things and I like to experiment and try things, I also know what I like. And there are some categories that I'm just probably not going to enjoy or just not really interested in. And I think that's okay. So anyway, keep an eye out for my reading journal setup video if you want to see the rest of the prompts. Again, leave suggestions if you have any in the comments for other prompts I could add. And also tell me what your reading goals are for 2026. Do you have a number goal? If so, what is it? Do you have other specific goals? Do you have any challenges you're doing like I am? Do you have one-off goals? I want to know all of your goals, so leave them in a comment. And also before you leave, go to someone else's comment and encourage them before you go. Because I really think that we should be ushering in a year of supporting each other and encouraging each other and hyping each other up with our goals instead of having this weirdly adversarial or competitive energy and tearing each other down. I just feel like there's enough terrible things happening in the world right now. We don't need to make our community more hateful and mean. The internet is already a very reactionary and angry place, and I just feel like it's nice to spread positivity and encouragement for each other. So share your goals, go to another comment and encourage them to meet their goal, and subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you'll be notified when I post my 2026 reading journal setup. I'm very excited to be focused on my reading journal again in 2026. If you want to know why I didn't post reading journal content for the vast majority of 2025, check out my book bracket video, figuring out my favorite read of 2025. I address it in that video. I'll link it in the description box because I don't want to repeat myself too many times, but I'm very excited to be focusing on my reading journal again, to have lots of goals that I can attempt to meet, and just be a lot more intentional about what I'm picking up and why in 2026. It's something that I have tried to do throughout my reading life, especially in the last 5 years or so, but it's something that I really struggled with in 2025, just with everything else that was going on. And I think I've just realized it's really good for me to have goals. It's good for me to challenge myself, as long as I'm not too hard on myself when I fail, because I'm sure I will not hit every single one of these goals. I'm sure I will miss at least one of them, if not multiple of them, but at least it's something to aim for. It's something that I can focus on. It's something I can reach for, strive for. And I think that's a positive thing, at least for me and my personality and my brain. But those are all of my reading goals for 2026, at least as of right now. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching this whole video. If you did, leave an award emoji in the comments. That's your award for watching the whole video. Congratulations and thank you. I appreciate you. And I will see you very soon in my next one. Bye, friends.